Okay, everybody, welcome to 1871 and our Courageous Minds Only event tonight. So as a raise of hands, do we have anybody that's new to our space or 1871? Love it. Okay, so 1871 is a nonprofit that exists to inspire, support, and equip early stage founders, growth stage founders, late stage companies, and corporate innovators to build extraordinary businesses. We exist to build community resources and programs to help these companies innovate, become bigger and stronger. That being said, one of these events here tonight is one of those community events that brings the whole community together and helps you think differently and inspire you based on others' journeys. So with that, this event tonight is in partnership with the Garage Group. I'd like to introduce Jason, who is going to walk through the intros and get us kicked off.
All right. Everybody, is this going in and out? Maybe, yeah, a little bit, but it's all good. We'll figure it out. Yeah, thanks again for being here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jason Hauer, co-founder of the Garage Group and founder of the Courageous Minds Only community. The Garage Group exists to help courageous leaders keep their brand portfolios relevant and growing in the face of uncertainty. And we created the Courageous Minds Only community as a platform and a place really for all of you to come together for courage, inspiration, and ideas as you're building your brands and your companies and increasing uncertainty. So just really appreciate you being here. We have an amazing panel tonight. We have Garry from Rheaply, Jorie from United Airlines, and then Reiner from Mars. We'll talk a little bit more about their backgrounds in a minute. If you haven't been to a Courageous Minds Only event before, or if you have, you've heard me say this. If you haven't, I'll remind everybody. It's not enough to me in the community for you just to be here. Entrepreneurship and being entrepreneurial is about taking action, right? And my wish for all of you is to identify one thing that you can take out of this event tonight, whether it's somebody you connected with, a conversation, and apply it to your life to make yourself better, your company better, those around you better. And I think if you can get in the cycle of having the courage to act on things and building resiliency in yourself, you can have a pretty dramatic impact on yourself and the people around you, whether your family, your colleagues, etc. And I think a lot of the conversation tonight, there will be that resiliency built through courageous actions and trying things and taking on new challenges. And we have that. All the panelists have that today. So does that sound good? All right. And Stephanie, you can remind us at the end here about the one thing, right? So in Courageous Minds Only fashion, I'd love to dive in, and we'll hear more about their backgrounds and careers so you get to know them a little bit in terms of context for the conversation. But would love to start out with a moment in your career where courage was just, you had to be courageous, whether it was a job change, a new challenge you took on, opportunity. Jorie, you want to kick us off?
I'd be happy to. I am more than happy to share one particular example. I will caveat it by saying that I've reinvented myself so many times over in my life that I feel like I don't know a life where I'm not being courageous. I think it's just ingrained in me, and I think it stems from not knowing what the heck I want to do when I grow up and being really excited about trying new things all the time. And I think in order to do that, you have to be super courageous. The story that I usually tell is I'm 20 years old and I finished school, and I was a paralegal at that point for about 2.5 years and thought I would go to law school, and decided I don't want that at all. I don't know what I want to do. And I just walked in and quit my job without any idea of where I would go. And it was at the time when you applied through want ads in the newspaper, for those of you that might be old enough to remember that. And just sending your resume blind places. And I think about 2 days left in employment, was also supporting myself financially, by the way. 2 days left in my employment, I got a call from the Chicago White Sox when I'd interviewed for them. And they said, you know that rejection letter that you got? because I interviewed and I got rejected. Well, the first candidate didn't accept the salary, so will you? And I thought, probably against my better judgment, I'm going to go ahead and accept it because I have no other option whatsoever. I don't know what the job was going to entail because they didn't know at the time. And 3 days later, I started, and needless to say, it was actually the best job I've ever had in my career. And it reinforced the fact that sometimes you don't need to know where you're going next. You just have to trust your gut and your instincts.
Bet on yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Garry, how about you, man?
Nice to meet you all. So similar story. So I was in corporate America before I started my company, a startup here called Rheaply, which we'll talk about a little later. But I was working at Ernst & Young in their supply chain organization, and I had done graduate work at Northwestern, and so I had spent my about 9.5, 10 years making $28,000 a year living in Chicago. And I got this great job at EY. I remember calling my parents, and everyone was so happy. I was like making more than my parents combined. It was amazing. And then I called my parents 3 years later, like, hey, I'm going to quit that job and start a company where I'm going to pay myself about $30,000 a year again. And I remember, like, my mother is in supply chain. And I remember her going, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What's the business do? So I remember I had the family support, but they were literally like, I'm questioning this financial decision kind of support. And so I reached out to some other founders who were PhDs, who had gone to consulting, who had then started a company. So I remember I talked to 3 of folks like that, and they all said, have a customer like for your company before you leave your consulting gig. So it's like, that's important wisdom. And I'll just say that we had a customer. I left EY. We launched a company a month later. And on the very morning that we started, November 1, 2016, at about 9:03 in the morning, I got an email from the head of procurement from the customer that we had said, hey, we're actually not going to do any work with you. And so as my co-founders literally came up the stairs in my apartment for their very first day at work, where they had left their great paying jobs, I had to break the news that after 3 minutes of the company being open, we lost our only customer. So it was, I remember, like, how do I get around this? And
Tell your mom.
I don't think I've ever told my mom
great.
that story. And so it was really like I saw the email and they started coming up the stairs. And I was like, I don't know how to manage it. So I think my first thought on courage is just being like, hey, this is what this might be like. Let's just like figure out how to make this day as best as possible. Lucky to say that that's a strong customer for us now. But yeah, I love it.
Father telling your mom any bad news.
Yes. She always sees the press. She doesn't see the bad stuff.
Saving it at some point, right? Yeah. Reiner, how about you, man?
Yeah. So when you look at my bio, I spent 23 years in the same company and 20 years of that in marketing. So you might think, well, that's not very courageous. But I was lucky to be able to do lots of things within those jobs to really try something very different that we hadn't done for the first time. Moves in countries were always like courageous moves. But I want to point out one move that was only 3.5 years ago, roughly, where I basically quit my 20-year marketing career and went 100% into innovation. So I went to the US about 5.5 years ago, moved my family over here, and had the prospect of continuing a classic marketing career in a big CPG company. And I think things changed and something popped up, which was the message, hey, we need to change the way we innovate completely, start to finish. That was 5% of my role before, looking after innovation processes globally, and that turned into 100% of my job. And like what you said, no job description. We didn't know what it was. We just knew that what we did before wasn't working as well. It needed somebody to really change. And that's what I did for the last 4 years, where changing more than 100-year-old place every single day pretty fundamentally was the task that I had to lead. So that it took a bit of courage. Not like founding a new company, like from a personal risk level, but it was definitely something where I had to jump over my shadow and jump into that. And in my previous career, I had lots of moments of that we can talk about later.
I love the stories of courage of all three of you betting on yourselves. Like um, moving the conversation along, I love just for the audience a little bit of context. I think you guys each have touched on kind of your part of your journey, but um, like just give everybody just a quick thumbnail in terms of your career and then what you are focused on now. And Reiner, you want to start?
Yeah. So at classic marketing start back in Germany. I'm German originally. Started in Mars, and classic marketing. That was the first chapter. Brand management, very very classic start. And then there was another move. Actually, that was a courageous move because I remember the HR head back then when I told him that I'm going to go to a little subsidiary of a department store to set up their e-commerce business in the early 2000s, right before the dot-com bubble. Our HR head said, "You are so stupid." But I'm glad I did it. So I learned a lot in there. Built a little company from scratch, leading the marketing department, the team. Also had to dismantle some of the team. That was a not so nice experience, but one that you learn from for life. So that was great. Did that for 3 years and then went back into the classic marketing organization before I moved into the next chapter, which was in the UK. So I moved over to London. That was amazing. Our second daughter was born there, and that's always something that I can recommend to everybody. If you have the chance to change country, change context, do it. It's you can learn so much from it. So I led the bite size and gifting business for Europe back then, including M&M's as a big brand. And from there, there was a classic career path move actually. Then back to Germany, was marketing director and category director. Led that marketing department for a few years before I went into the first global role, and that was leading M&M's, our biggest brand, and that was so much fun. So your mission is basically to make people laugh in the advertising and everything. So that was brilliant. That was an easy move. That was not nobody had to push me there over the courage line. And and then the next chapter was moving to the US, where I first led integrated marketing. That was a function that combined everything that a marketer needs to do a good business. So anything from media capabilities and responsible marketing, design and artwork management. And a little bit of innovation processes. And that led then into the last chapter of transforming innovation in mass rugby globally, which I've done for the last 3.5 years.
Garry, how about you, man? I'm curious to hear how the end of the story goes, at least where you left us hanging, but maybe we'll go back a little bit here.
Yes, my life in thumbnails. So did a BS in math at Indiana University. I'm a Midwesterner. Born and raised in Ohio, went to Indiana University for undergrad, did a BS in math, BA in chemistry, worked there for a year in the chemistry department, came to Chicago in 2008 for graduate school at Northwestern, where I did a PhD in neuroscience, in a program at Kellogg. Did a postdoctoral fellowship at the medical school, working on a cure for Parkinson's. That's where I found the problem that Rheaply, my company, is solving, which is my lab had lots of stuff that we weren't using, and there was literally labs across the hallway that had budget constraints, and they needed the stuff that we weren't using, but they didn't know that we had it. We didn't know that they needed it, so that we would throw things away. They would buy stuff that they shouldn't buy. And so, get back to that in a second. Left my postdoc, went to consulting. I always said we always do a tour in consulting. Everyone always does a tour of consulting of some sort. So I went to Ernst & Young, worked in their supply chain division for about 3 years. 1 year I worked in kind of M&A, but mostly for life science and biotechnology companies. And then I started Rheaply. Rheaply is a software climate technology company founded here in Chicago. We help organizations with this concept called circular economy or circularity. And what that really means, if you've heard reduce, reuse, recycle, we build technology to help companies with reuse. So reuse of physical goods and reuse them in their own companies to kind of reduce purchasing, reduce waste, reduce carbon emissions from manufacturing. And then we find happy homes for their items when they no longer need them internally back into the community. And we measure all the impact along the way.
Amazing. Jorie?
I have no idea how to even summarize what I've done. So I majored in psychology because I was always interested in why people think and behave the way they do. I also love the interconnection between, or the dynamics between people. And that really kicked off my career. I thought I would go to law school because I questioned everything growing up. I asked why or why not. And I was always inquisitive about everything, huge thirst for learning. And I honestly just let that ride throughout my entire career. If I was curious about something, I wanted to explore it. And so when I decided not to go to law school, I just fell into sports marketing, knew nothing about it, but I thought, I like sports. It's fun. At least I'm going to have a good time in my 20s. And I had a blast in my 20s, but I learned a ton. And I did everything from contract negotiation to market research to client service to event planning. And I wore so many hats. And I realized you can really make a role whatever it is that you want to make it. And what inspired me the most was the team related aspect of the roles. Not to take it literally, you can obviously have teams without working for a professional sports team. But it helps when you work for a professional sports team because there really isn't anything that you can do in a silo or independently. And I really, really loved that role. I was there for 9 seasons and 8 years, but we talk in seasons in sports. And then I thought I wanted a new challenge. I was really curious what it was like to work at a place that had more than 150 people and everybody worked under the same roof. And every February wasn't the same, and every June wasn't the same, and every November wasn't the same. And I transitioned into beer. Made sense to me at the time. Sports, then beer. And I leveraged my background in legal to review marketing and advertising. I thought, all right, well, I know a couple of things. Let me put them together. But let me do it through a different route. So most people would not think of someone who worked in sports marketing as somebody that should be in the legal department of a highly regulated industry such as alcohol. But because I understood people and I understood the way to work with others and to manage risk, I was able to kind of sell myself, so to speak. And I think I've always just done that through the lens of transferable skills and creativity and really understanding the root of what each role really requires and being able to speak to that when the moment is key. And I've always been up against traditional specialists who have years of experience for every particular role. And I managed to get in and work my way through legal and somehow parlayed it from legal to digital marketing innovation and co-leading an incubator. Again, knew absolutely nothing about emerging technologies, and here I am building beer buttons and Alexa skills and chat bots, working with 1871, which was my introduction here. And that was when I learned about white space and how to whiteboard properly and how to think big and take risks. And I really loved it. And having had the legal background, I understood where the line was to toe. And I had garnered the respect to be able to take on the risks and go beyond the line. So I think that it was then that I realized if you just build trust with anybody that you're working with, you can pretty much get away with murder. And so, at that point, when you know more than others or you figure out a way to kind of game the system, but in a way that is just safe enough to protect the integrity of a brand or of a company while also trying to really stretch the boundaries, you've nailed it. And that's what any company is going to want of their employees, right? And so I did that for 6 years and then said, all right, what's next? Beer. I'd done sports. Let's travel the world. Let's get into the airline industry and see what we can shake up. And so from there, I did everything from in-flight mobile apps, and strategy to gate experience redesign for our customers, our employees, to managing food and beverage on board. And it was all rooted in the human experience and trying to enhance and cultivate a inclusive experience for everyone, no matter what region, no matter what age, no matter what background, no matter what dietary restrictions someone has. And about a year and a half ago, I seized an opportunity to lead a new digital technology innovation hub for the company. And so I've been accelerating long-term strategies through emerging technology. And what really drew me to that is less the technology side and more about the facilitation and the enablement of a cultural shift within our company and inspiring others to think differently and recognize that everyone innovates and that inclusion propels innovation, which is something that we talk about a lot internally.
See, I told you these. All three of them are really impressive. It's amazing. I'm curious, in terms of your current focus, what do you feel like from a mindset perspective has enabled you to be successful? The 3.5-year journey in terms of resetting the way Mars innovates, Jorie, your mindset in terms of partnering across the organization and really adding value. You're engaging corporate customers and changing the way they think about asset management. And what has been your mindset to make progress and persevere through kind of the challenges? Because none of it's easy, right? Like, Reiner?
Yes, I mean, there's this, it's a bit cliche, but there's this art of the possible mindset. So that there is something in it because it's not a pure science. If you want to drive change, like in my case, in a big corporate environment, well, they're often very change resistant. So if you don't come in as the one driving the change with giving confidence, speaking positively about the future despite all the challenges that are there, don't expect anyone to follow you. So it's this, always inspiring people with this would be the output when it's there, but also, and that's something that I learned along the journey actually, stepping into the shoes of the people at the receiving end. Because people, like human beings, inherently dislike change. Yeah, so when you ask people who likes change, everybody goes, yeah. Who likes to change? Not so much. And it's natural. It's just the human brain. Yeah, we avoid change. So if you don't step into the shoes of the people who have to change and change their own behavior along the way, don't expect to be successful. And at the beginning of the journey, I made some mistakes there. So like, I've got the vision. Look, this is amazing. Let's drive with the vision and positive. But I didn't think enough about, okay, how does this that process by the person who has to change what they've learned for 10 years or 20 years. And throughout the journey, like we put a lot more focus into stepping into the shoes of the people who have to receive the change and drive the change in the end. And then you build coalitions, and those coalitions drive the change in the end. Yeah? It's always a combination of top-down and grassroots, and both need to work together.
How did Reiner, the expert marketer, have to change to then, obviously the empathy piece and the vision piece and new ways of working, but how did you, from a leadership perspective, have to fundamentally change in the new space in terms of like what enabled you to be successful versus kind of the new space?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one thing, I invested a lot in my own learning. So it's a bit like I'm German. I like Angela Merkel and I like the previous chancellor because she was a very untypical politician. Because she was a scientist by background, and she took long for decisions, but she wanted to understand the subject because she has a scientific background, and that made her make really good decisions and keep her in her role for 16 years. So what I like about that is I firmly believe that if you want to change something in a new subject and you're changing your field, you got to have a good level of base understanding of what you're talking about. Obviously, rely on the people who are with you in the team. You know, they will always know more than you will ever know about the topic, and encourage them to challenge you on everything. That's what I do all the time. Like I always, everybody working with me, first thing I tell them, I want you to challenge me. If you disagree, speak up, and I want to know it. So that combined with, you need to have a good level of knowledge yourself. So I read 25 books about corporate innovation, or more than that. I listened to 400 podcasts. I talked to so many experts in the field, people in other companies, really learning about the topic. And that helped me tremendously to just push myself and feel more confident as well. Like when I talk in front of an audience and want them to change 10-year-old behaviors, if they don't have a feeling that I know what I'm talking about, they're likely not going to follow. So that's one element.
I love it. Garry, how about you, man?
So we deal with change all the time, obviously. So we're trying to help people not throw things away that they normally would, not buy things that they normally would. And these are huge companies, so they have processes that are decades old. So one thing that I think about, so I completely align myself with learning. In fact, one of the things that I learned at EY that the partner I worked under used to say is that we will always out-question our competition. So if Deloitte's in there pitching, if BCG's in there pitching, we're going to ask more questions. So when they come out of the room, they're like, well, that EY team, they really asked us a lot of questions. So we're really committed at Rheaply of asking really powerful questions to help us learn, but it also helps the customer have an insight to like what we're thinking about. But apart from learning, our core values are around this whole topic. So not to repeat all of them, although I make everyone memorize them if they work at Rheaply, we have a mantra that helps you remember our core values, which is listen, delight, and help. So when I think about change, those three things come to me is like, are we listening to our customers? Are we delighting them? Change is hard. So we always say like, it doesn't have to be boring. The work is hard, but it doesn't have to be boring. So don't be boring is one of our mantras at Rheaply. And then help. Because at the very end of the day, if we're not helping a customer get to a goal, helping them save money or whatever it is, we're not really doing much. We're just moving. So we think about the framework of like, yeah, this change might hurt some folks, but we're going to listen. We're going to have a little fun along the way, and we're hopefully going to be helpful.
How about you, Jorie? Just in terms of mindset, as you jump into these new challenges, like just in terms of United specifically, what has enabled you to be successful from a mindset perspective?
I would say, first and foremost, relationships. It really takes establishing genuine relationships and building bridges across teams, particularly in a large matrix organization. I think, the other panelists echoed what I would have said in terms of, legacy companies and bringing people along. I would say it's the relationships, it's the earning trust, and it's the actual showing. Put your money where your mouth is and show them proof that it can be done. And change doesn't have to be something massive. It can be small wins. And I think that's really important because sometimes people come in with preconceived notions of what change or innovation can be or look like. Some of them are afraid of it. Some of them just outright don't want it. And I think finding the right folks that are open enough to it to give it a try and willing to put a little faith in you can go a long way. And you only need one person. So like you were saying about the client, having one client, sometimes you just need one person to go on that journey with you, and then you'll get two, and then you'll get three. And again, proof.
At least the first step with you, and then
Absolutely. And that's what builds your own reputation as well, as somebody that can be trusted, that's dependable, that even if I don't know anything about a particular technology, and there's a lot of technologies that I don't, I trust my team, like you had mentioned, and I challenge them to challenge me. And I think that's important. And I'm very open and honest about what I don't know. And I think that's also really important, and recognizing that and speaking to that. Because we don't know everything, and I'm not professing to know everything, and I'm not professing to own really anything. My team owns it all, but I have faith in them, and if I have faith in them, I would expect others internally to have faith in themselves first and foremost, and just trust that we can work together for an outcome that's going to be beneficial for everyone.
we're gonna do Q&A here in a little bit, so be thinking about some good questions. We're gonna go deep here for a second. So whether it's your co-founders are coming up the steps. You're pre-listening to 1,000 podcasts and reading 100 books. I'm exaggerating a little bit there, but you might be underselling yourself there. And Jorie, just in terms of just all the change you've driven, what did you learn about yourself having the courage to step into those big challenges and persevere? Like, none of us know it's not perfect. It's hard as hell. Your ass kicked. Like, what have you learned about yourself that maybe you didn't know, that even from that moment of your co-founders coming up the steps? And it's one thing to take the leap and you're kind of getting started, but you learn a whole lot about yourself just being an entrepreneur, I know, like through the journey. So
yeah, there's so many lessons. I'm just trying to boil it down to one big one. I think there's a certain level, it was said before, around vision, that I think if you don't believe really deep in whatever it is, something you're trying to enact within your company or starting another company, if there's not a root core belief in, like, I don't know all the steps of how this works, but it will work if we can get there, I just don't think it's possible for you to lead that. So the one thing that I now know is if I truly believe in something, I put myself into it. I go all in. I don't leave a chip behind because I can't do that. But if I do, then I know that it's, I can't lead it. So starting the company, raising the money, going through COVID, going through civil unrest, going through what we're going through now, I can't look people in their eye and say, come work for me, if I don't truly believe that where we're going is really important and really impactful. I can't really look a customer in the eye and say, yeah, we're going to deliver that carbon savings for you, if I don't really believe it. So I think there's like a root belief of the vision that you're espousing that you have to have in order to have big shoulders enough to force change through any type of organization.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. Yeah, Reiner.
Yeah, totally echo that. So if that's not there, forget it. You're not going to be successful because people sense it immediately. We have so many sensors that are totally subconscious. Like you see that from when you've seen a leader on stage and you had the feeling, okay, that person is not fully committed. You smell it 100 meters against the wind. And when that happens, then you lose people. So completely echo with that. Like what I learned personally about myself on the journeys, like when the setbacks are there, you need some mechanisms to pull you back out. And actually, those podcasts and stuff like that helped me quite a bit because it's a constant reminder, listening to case studies of people who have done what I do successfully, listening to their difficult moments that they had. It drives comfort. It gives you a message of, okay, I'm not alone in this. And then the fact that I have so many books, I actually have around 100 books probably, but I've read 25. I'm honest with it. But the fact that there are so many books about the topic and the challenges that I'm dealing with every single day tells me, okay, I'm on the right path. And that's just great, yeah. And if you have something like that, something that you can lean on to drive some confirmation that you're on the right path. The coalitions that I talked about earlier, talking to some of your sponsors, your mentors. I was always lucky to have great mentors. Talk to them and say, hey, be honest about this is not working, feels really bad. Usually what you get is good advice. And then from there you can pull yourself out again and do the next chapter. And then when the recognition comes, there's nothing better. Yeah. So if you drive change, if you build a new company, you see your first customer order coming in, and I mean, what better is there? So
I love that because when I feel like I'm trying to do something that I haven't done before personally, the reference in terms of, okay, it's possible, it's been done. And I hope that the three of you are a reflection here too. If you're in situations where you're getting ready to take that courageous act, or you're reflecting on what that could be, this is what's possible here too if you act, right? So it's good. Jorie, how about you?
I think over time I've learned that it's not an independent road. And what I mean by that is I've learned that for myself, I'm at my best when I work for a visionary leader. and I can be tethered to that visionary leader who inspires me on a daily basis. And I work over people that are smarter than I am. For me, it's all about the team, and I know very little at the end of the day. And as long as I get out of the way and I trust my team and I'm with people that I like to be around, truly anything is possible. And so I think I've learned over time that it's not about me at all. And I just need to get out of my head, get out of the way, and trust the process, have faith in my team, and be surrounded by people that inspire me and get me excited every day. Because when I need to be pulled out of those moments of doubt or failure, it's the people that I'm surrounded by. That's the reason why I'm in that role and in that position. And I'm grateful for all the people before me that I worked with and that inspired me and helped develop and build me to who I am today.
Can I build on that? There's one interesting thing that I learned from a very senior creative director in one of the big agencies. She was in a panel and I had a little dialogue with her, which was about sharing of your idea. So is the senior decorated golden Cannes lion person telling me that the first thing she does when she has a great idea is to share it with as many people as possible. And I was like, you make your money based on your idea. Like, are you not afraid that they're stealing your idea? Like, and she's like, totally wrong concept. Like, when I share it, I get feedback. It gets better with every piece of feedback. And in the end, I am more successful with my idea. And I mean, think about it. Yeah, that's how it happens. And she did say, yes, I've had a few moments where somebody stole my idea. And that sucks. But in the grand scheme of things, it works. So how does that lead to like what I learned about how I drive change? I share it a lot more than I used to do. Just tell everybody. And yeah, maybe somebody takes it and sells it as their idea. You know what? Doesn't matter. If you move the organization, brilliant. Yeah, it's done the job. So sometimes it's all about like taking the ego back a little bit and saying, okay, it's not important that I am the name attached to that idea. It is important that the ship is sailing in the right direction. And if more sailors know where to go, you end up in the right spot.
It's amazing. I'm going to ask like two more questions and we'll open it up. So be thinking about questions. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk more about the business kind of trend opportunity side of things. All three of you sit in a place of driving disruption, both risk management for potential like fatal trends that could impact your business models, but also helping your companies, in your case, Garry, your clients take advantage of trends that are out there. But I'm just curious for the audience, whether entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, how are you guys seeing the market from your points of view, and like where are we at in terms of the sustainability, circularity movement? I know you've worked a lot around kind of future business models and that sort of thing. And Jorie, you're working across the business depending on where there's great partnership and vision and buy-in there. But I'm curious, how do you see a lot of these trends and opportunities going over the next 3-5 years? And like, what impact do you think that some of the trends that are out there are going to have on your businesses?
Well, I'll go first. So it's no surprise that COVID had a major impact on the airline industry, many industries, of course, but speaking for the airline industry, the traveler's lifestyle, work and personal, has changed quite a bit. And I think we can all agree that the reasons for traveling, how we travel, is very different today than it was yesterday. And I think that's only going to evolve in the future. The demand is definitely back, but that doesn't mean demand is happening in the same way that it was before. And so for us, we have to evolve to meet the demands. And with a mission of uniting, connecting people and uniting the world, at the end of the day, there isn't one demographic that we serve. We're serving everyone, and we're serving everyone globally. Being the largest airline now, it's really important that we think about what the future holds, because we're not going to get there very quickly if we don't all come together and we aren't eyes wide open to the trends, whether it's technology trends, whether it's travel trends, whether it's environmental trends. We're looking at all of that. We're investing in the future. We have a phenomenal ventures team. And it's really important that we are 5-10 years ahead, not just from a competition standpoint, but to continue to be the preferred choice. And what does that look like for our employees, from a recruiting and a retaining talent, to passengers, and how can we make the world a better place, and one that is great for generations to come? We have that responsibility, and we take that on a daily basis. And we don't sleep 365, 24/7. So it's not something that we can just, turn the lights off at 5 o'clock and go home and think, we'll deal with it tomorrow. We truly can't. So it's something that is ingrained in all of us that work in the airline industry, and particularly within United.
I love United.
Me too. Thanks.
There's many trends. So just to maybe bullet it, obviously, so we're in the sustainability climate space. Big trend. We have to reduce global carbon emissions by 50% by 2030. That's 80 months from now. So we have 80 months to do what we've kind of never done in the history of humans ever. So big trend. Below that, well, in February, the SEC will issue some guidance around the so-called Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions reporting. Not to bore you with that, that's going to have heavy implications around what businesses report on from a sustainability perspective, but what they actually do to get more sustainable. That will have a net good effect for our business, but net good effect hopefully to that 50% goal by 2030. I think in the private markets, it's really hard to be a startup right now, and maybe even an early ventures fund. Obviously, what's happening with the Fed and interest rates aren't helpful if you're trying to grow a company, especially at our stage. You're kind of really got beyond product market fit, and you're kind of in the growth stage. So it's hard, especially if you're closer to IPO. It's even really hard right now. So if you are a climate tech company like mine, and you have a lot of demand from folks like the folks sitting on this stage because of 2030 scenarios, because of next February scenarios, how do you handle demand when the private markets are essentially closed or not good? So I think one of the trends that so those colliding trends keep me up at night, because I started this company not necessarily for a big return, although I know that it will be. I started because I was a neuroscientist, as I told you. I started because I really got engaged in how can I put my hand on climate and do something? So I want to do something, but I have a board and I have fiduciary responsibilities. And so I think those are the trends that I continue to lay awake. But obviously there's AI and there's other things that we're really excited about, but those are the ones that keep me up at night.
Reiner?
From a food industry perspective, short term, the supply chain disruptions, inflation, that's what definitely keeps everybody busy. The last few years, look at the Russia-Ukraine situation. That has disrupted the global supply chains in a way like we've rarely seen. Suddenly you have to change thousands of recipes because the sunflower oil is no longer available and you need to switch to other oils. So it's very immediate effects of global politics and whatever is going on in the world. And then inflation is definitely something that remains to be seen. What is the impact of what is going on at the moment? And people are already changing their buying behavior when it comes to groceries, food supply, and so those are the short-term things. I think they will get under control at some point, but none of that works if we don't challenge the long-term effects of sustainability, climate change. The food industry is so much affected by it, but also part of the creation of the problem, right? So Mars has committed to be Scope 3 net positive by 2050. So that may seem long time away, but it's A, Scope 3, and B, it's a ton of work and a lot of innovation that needs to happen to do that as an end-to-end supply chain. So being in the innovation space, what that means for me is like shifting more of our innovation efforts into those spaces, because it will not work with just continuing to sell what we have. You've got to find new solutions. So that's a big one. And yeah, alongside with energy. So one of the reasons why I stayed for so long in this one company is because it's a family-owned and private and very principle-driven company, and they have always invested a lot into cocoa supply chains, making them fair, and for example, switching to wind energy to a large extent in North America and other regions where we finance wind farms and have our operations largely run on wind energy. So actually, it's cheaper. Yeah, so that's the great thing that also needs to change. Yeah, we need to bring the cost down for these solutions so that it's not an opportunity cost, but it's a benefit to the business. And there are great examples out there where that is happening already.
One last question, separate topic, and then we'll open it up to Q&A, both online and here at 1871. What would you say is the number one tip that you would share with the audience around like persistently refounding your career? Each of you has just persistently stayed fresh, and what's the number one tip there? Whoever wants to jump in first, go for it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. My tip would be do something, I said it before, but do something, pursue something of deep personal passion. And what I've also counseled other founders and other folks that I have a chance to mentor is, I always say, have an exit criteria. Knowing good is good, knowing the job is done, knowing you've accomplished something. And maybe it's, I only want to do this for the rest of my life. Fantastic. But there are probably micro parts of that. When can I move to a different department, or when can I move to a different project? So I like to have deep passion. I went for reproductive cancer research to neuroscience, now in climate, nothing to do with each other. I'm just deeply passionate about each one of those things. And I had a goal that I wanted to achieve in each one. And when I achieved that goal, I asked myself, what am I now passionate about? And go tackle that with the same ferocity.
Reiner?
Yeah, one thing that I once had a boss ages ago, actually one that I didn't go well along with, the only one that I didn't go well along with, but he left me with one thing. And that was, he had this picture of a soccer player. So I come from Europe, so it's soccer, not football. And like when you imagine the soccer player, and there is this little window between the other players towards the goal, and he always talked about gravity towards the goal. And he said, like, look out for those windows. Wherever you are, when you are in business, when you are like in your private life, there's always little windows. And imagine you're this soccer player who sees this window and then has the gravity towards the goal, storms through and run with it. And that helped me in many times. So I'm always like on the lookout for, okay, where is this opportunity? Where could we do things differently? And these little windows, okay. And then I think, okay, I run through it. So that was the case for all of the moves that I made, and especially this last one. That window showed up. I said, okay, do you stop with your marketing career? Yes or no? But okay, let's run.
Love it. Jorie?
I would say know your worth and know how to sell yourself in any situation. I think that allows you to navigate any environment, make any pivots. It allows you to mentor others. It allows you to have faith in yourself when you might not. Being able to remind yourself of what you can contribute, what you value, and the values that you can impart onto others. And I think, we don't focus enough on how roles translate. It's very black. It doesn't have to be so black and white. And I would have never been able to navigate my career if I just looked at a job description or looked at a title or let every door close in front of me. It's all about influence and convincing the next person. And also in your daily lives. I mean, we have to influence on a regular basis. And I think that when you know how to do that for yourself, it shows confidence. You feel confident about yourself, and it allows you to be Superman, Superwoman. and you can really do anything at that point.
Love it. Let's open it up. Let's start here in the room, and then we'll jump online. Go ahead. You guys can jump here. I mean, it sounds like me growing up. I feel like just having a mindset of like for wherever you are in your context, it's like bettering yourself and building valuable skills, right? So just even having that mentality would be just something I would think about. But how about you guys?
At least for me, I would say, not this is a commercial, 1871. So
Agreed.
where we are here, I'm a happy board member of 1871, but it's also where I started my company. So I believe it not because I'm on the board, but because I've done it. But I would also say the most helpful thing to a founder is a founder. And I answer every DM on any platform if someone says, hey, I have an idea. And almost always I just say, just get started. It doesn't mean you have to go full time tomorrow. Just start the business. Start thinking about what products you would have. What would your employees look like? What would your business model? Start somewhere. Start with journaling. So I think the hardest thing in starting a startup is starting. And so I just try to give people the confidence, unlock your own anxieties by just starting on a piece of paper, and then go find a founder or find 1871 would be what I would say on the resources side.
Let's keep going.
And I'm going to have you use a mic just because the online audience can't hear.
Really quick, let's jump online. I'll come back to you. Do we have any questions?
I have the mic.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
can
go
we do
ahead.
this and then
Yeah,
I'll bring
go
it
ahead.
back?
Go ahead. I just didn't want to leave them out.
Thank you for doing this. I guess my question is around something that Jorie mentioned, like the F word, failure, which in corporate America, I feel like you're not often rewarded for failure. Like, how did you encourage that kind of within your organizations? And also, what are some of the like most impactful failures for you guys that you've experienced, or what did you learn from them?
Well, we'll start off just by the first part of the question, and that is every time I talk about my role and my team's role, I talk about failures. So I think first and foremost, it's adding that to the regular vernacular and making it a word that is common to hear, because a lot of organizations don't speak on it, and a lot of folks are afraid of it. And so I make it a point to say, a failure can still be a success. And then I explain how and why, and that it's not about, again, this black or white, did something scale, or if it didn't, it's a failure. But what does failure mean? Is failure knowledge? Is failure coming out of it with an entirely new or pivoted product? If so, that's not a failure, because you started with something and you ended with something. It just might not be the same thing. Granted, it might have changed what your key results are, but you're now starting in another place, and that's a great thing. And so I think it's all about incorporating it into your vernacular on a very regular basis and ingraining it in the culture of the team or the company or whatever it is, as a starting point. I'll let others.
Yeah, and reframe it as learning. It's always this, like, it's no point doing lots of failures if you don't learn anything. Many people say, "Oh, you got to fail fast, fail early, and all of that." Yeah, there's something to it, but only if you learn. So what I've tried to do, what you just said, we do that as well. Like every 3 weeks, we have a whole community meeting with all the innovators, and the first thing we talk about what did not work in the last 3 weeks, to really make it normal to talk about these things, because that's where you learn a lot more, and then capture the learnings. That's actually another point in the corporate world that many big companies are not great at. So you don't translate the failure into a learning, and then you don't capture the learning so that the next person 5 years later does the same failure again. It's a lot of preventable failures in big companies because you've got the churn in people. So talk about it and capture it.
We talk a lot about it too from a garage group perspective on in areas of uncertainty, you're not executing, you're searching, right? And just because you try something and experiment, it didn't work, like you're learning, right? To the point over here. So it's failure is a means, whether you're doing an initiative and you have a conviction and you finally get to the right answer after the 10th or 100th try, or it's an initiative you just shut down and you learned from. Like there's failure in both respects, right? But the more to me that you can frame the process as it's searching and you're learning your way into figuring out, like adding new value and uncertainty. It's not about failure as much as it literally is just it's an applied learning exercise. And I think it's very hard for leaders sometimes when you grow up mastering the playbook, you're smartest person in the room, to go to all of a sudden, like you don't know anything and you're going through an applied process. Like there is some tension there, but the more you think about it as search versus execute, I think that's to me the most instructive thing that we talk about.
Just one more. Another thing is chunking down the elephant. So failure is a big failure is a problem, right? Especially when it's late in the process. So what we learned is we chunk everything into testable hypotheses in the early stages of development. You know, that's not new, but it's really difficult to do. And then it's just hypothesis passed or not passed. So you don't even need the word failure in there. You pass it or you don't pass it. Both is positive, because from there you go to the next one.
Last question over here. Make it a good one.
So, hey guys, one of the things that is very hard to manage nowadays is time. So how do you guys allocate, or how do you decide where do you allocate the most of your time, especially what is important for you guys, and also when you take into consideration personal to professional? So how do you go at it?
You want to start, Jorie?
I'm happy to take it. I learned very early on working in sports to respect boundaries. And so when I left sports, the one thing that I learned was I will have work-life balance and I will demand it of my teams and of my boss. And so right or wrong, I might be outing myself, but I don't check email nights and weekends. I haven't since I was 29, and I am not 29 anymore. And I will be honest, it takes a lot of courage in order to do that, but it has not failed me yet. And when someone has questioned that, I say I'm just as productive during the day because I am double, triple booked and I'm figuring out how to make that work. And so you're already getting a lot out of me. And at the end of the day, if you want me to work nights and weekends, this isn't the place for me. And that's not to say that I don't put in the work and I don't work extra hours, but that is on a volunteer basis. That is not an expectation. And I set that boundary with myself and I set it with my team. Whether it's vacations, I'm covering my team and I want them to cover me when I'm out. And you have to lead by example. It is, I will repeat, very, very hard to do. But I think that as long as you set up the work to meet the resources that you have, you're never going to overcommit. And I think at the end of the day, especially in our lives now more than ever, wellness is something that needs to be a priority. And that's a big word. We talk about that at United. Our number one core value is safety. And we don't just mean physical safety when you're flying. And so that's something that I take very seriously too. And when you don't have work-life balance, when you're overstretched, when your team is overstretched, when you allow others to impart their, craziness and their unhealthy, habits unto you, that's going to create a negative situation for your own health and wellness.
One question online, then we'll wrap.
Absolutely. So one of the questions is, how do you encourage your organizations and teams to be creative? Something that takes a lot of courage at times.
Yeah. Reiner, you want to take that one, man?
Yeah. So it's first of all, giving license to do it. Yeah. So almost like demanding it as one of the things that you do just every day as a normal thing to do. And so allowing the space. encouraging to create prototypes, for example. That's such a powerful thing that is so underutilized, especially in big corporations. Creativity starts, most of the time it starts with writing a concept and then testing that concept, asking people whether they would buy it and whatever, where people usually don't tell you what they really would do. So make a prototype. So we tried to push that a lot more over the last 3 years to just encourage people, yeah, do it, get out there, show it to your friends, show it to someone else, go to the factory. There's hundreds of people going in and out, show them the prototype. And if you have an idea, like do it that way. So more hands-on, less strategizing. That's what I would say.
Can we give the panel a round of applause here? Thank you. Really appreciate you guys. Stephanie?